Are you sitting comfortably? I ask this not to gauge your level of comfort in having to listen or perhaps at least half listen to me speak for the next 10 or maybe 15 minutes. Although, as a minor health warning, we have just heard 2 passages of Scripture that contain an awful lot of theology for us to unpack together. So I do hope you are sitting comfortably. Instead, I have a much better question. Are you in your comfort zone? I'm going to ask you to reflect for a moment about whether you feel you are living your life within or outside your comfort zone. And to help us with that, let me share with you a really good definition from Brené Brown, an expert and prolific writer and speaker on topics like courage and vulnerability, shame and empathy. She describes the phrase comfort zone as where our uncertainty, scarcity and vulnerability are minimized, where we believe we will have access to enough love, food, talent, time and admiration. And perhaps most important of all, where we feel we have some control. It's a great and very comfortable place to be, a place that we don't necessarily like to leave that much. But Brené Brown and countless other developmental psychologists also tell us that our comfort zones are places that inherently limit us. We do our growing as human beings when we are outside of our zone of comfort, when we are challenging ourselves or being challenged. When we choose only comfort, not only do we stop growing and developing as individuals, but our comfort zone also shrinks over time. Brené Brown encourages us to choose courage over comfort. Now, I think the reality is perhaps a bit more nuanced. And to be fair, I think Brené Brown does as well. Realistically, life is a marathon and not a sprint. There are times when we step way outside our comfort zone through choice or through necessity. And we learn and develop in those times very quickly indeed. That new career, that decision to move to another part of the country, an illness, or a moment of bereavement. And for much of the rest of the time, we might find ourselves nudging our way out of our comfort zones in more measured ways, taking on new and unfamiliar challenges from which we learn and grow. But equally, alongside those moments of growth, there is the need for rest and consolidation, a time to recover and take a breath. But the concept, I think, is an important one. Our physiological and psychological makeup as human beings mean that we grow and develop most when we are in a place that feels unfamiliar, a place that feels challenging and perhaps just a little bit scary. And while we might think most about our comfort zones in terms of our working lives or our voluntary roles or our relationships with others, I think the concept is just as relevant to our faith and our discipleship. I think it is healthy for all of us to reflect from time to time on whether, as part of this church and in our individual lives of faith, we are just a little bit too comfortable. Whether God is calling us to some new and unfamiliar and, yes, possibly slightly scary challenge. Whether we should be choosing courage over comfort. Which feels like a really good segue to the Apostle Paul and his time in Athens in front of the Areopagus that we heard from Edward just a while ago. I sense that Paul is operating well outside his comfort zone. And indeed, when we read our way through Acts, we can perhaps come to the conclusion that Paul is perennially outside his comfort zone. Such is his zeal for the Lord. To that, of course, we must remind ourselves that in Acts, Luke is providing us very much with the edited highlights. It's like watching Match of the Day. We get the exciting bits. And there are hints both in Acts and in Paul's letters that he too found the time and indeed the necessity to slow down occasionally and to rest in the fellowship of those who supported him across these new communities of faith. But what Luke mostly records in Acts through these missionary journeys is a Paul who is wholeheartedly prepared to step outside his comfort zone. There is a pattern to his mission and his ministry. He travels to a new place, he visits the local synagogue, he preaches Christ crucified and risen again. Some hear and become followers of the way, but many get angry. There is conflict, and Paul often has to flee for his life. On the second of his missionary journeys, Paul arrives in Athens having been beaten and jailed in Philippi. He then provokes a riot in Thessalonica and is sent away at night to Berea, some 40 miles away, where the Thessalonians follow him and force him to travel onward to Athens, leaving Silas and Timothy behind. This is hardcore ministry, life on the very edge. But then in Athens, the pattern changes just a little bit. Paul still finds his way to the synagogue and preaches there to both Jews and God-fearing Greeks. But then he finds himself arguing in the marketplace about the idolatry that he's found in Athens. And he is invited, somewhat sarcastically, by some Epicurean and Stoic philosophers to come and speak to a meeting of the Areopagus, the Athenian council. Luke records rather acidly that the passage just before our reading this morning, that all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. And it is in that context that they invite Paul to speak. And Paul, of course, seizes the opportunity. And while he is trained in the art of Greek rhetoric, this is something else altogether. Engaging the foremost philosophers of the age on their home ground. Engaging pagans and not his fellow Jews or God-fearing Gentiles. Well outside his comfort zone. And I think we can learn an awful lot for our own mission and ministry from what he did and what he said. Because he meets them where they are. He speaks their philosophical, rhetorical language and even includes elements of Greek poetry. For in him we live and move and have our being. We are his offspring. He engages them on matters they will recognize and understand. He praises them for their evident religiosity and finds a way to introduce his God amidst the bewildering array of pagan deities, to place his God within their context. And he presents to them a living creator God, a God incapable of representation in stone or gold or silver. And then, and only then, does he present Christ crucified and resurrected. It's a wonderful example, I think, of how we can be both authentic and deeply relevant in the way that we speak to others about our faith. Meeting people where they are and speaking directly into their context. And the outcome? Well, Luke records just after the passage that we heard from Edward that some sneered, that others asked to hear from Paul again, and that two others, Dionysius and Damaris, became followers of Christ. And of course, that's probably fairly representative of how it might go for us now as well. Not all of our conversations about Jesus will feel successful, and some will sneer. When, I wonder, was the last time that someone sneered at you for professing your faith? And if people aren't sneering, then perhaps we're not trying hard enough. Perhaps we're not stepping outside of our comfort zones. Because when we speak to others about our faith, let's face it, we are never alone. As Jesus promises in this wonderful part of his farewell discourse recorded in our reading from John's Gospel, these deeply theological parting messages of Jesus for his disciples, we are equipped for conversations like these by the Holy Spirit. The Greek word here is parakletos. It's a word that we often struggle to translate. In different places, in different translations of our Bibles, we might find the word advocate, or teacher, or helper, or comforter, or encourager. Now, they are all, I think, slightly imperfect translations. And perhaps the literal translation, while a little bit cumbersome, gives us the best rendering, sense of the meaning. More literally, parakletos means the one who comes alongside us. For me, it's evocative of a lot of the language that we use in both church and charity contexts, particularly when we're dealing pastorally, of coming alongside those who need our support, of figuratively walking alongside them. And I'm reminded in that context that the word compassion comes from the Latin compati, to suffer with. We are called by Jesus to come alongside those in need, to walk with them, and yes, to suffer with them. And of course, as we do that, the Spirit comes alongside us to equip and empower and enable us, supporting us when we need it, and suffering with us. This is the outworking of the living God that Jesus expresses so vividly to his disciples. Because I live, you also will live. I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. It's this wonderful sense of spiritual circularity and reciprocity. The Spirit is the outworking of the living Creator God, beyond any simple rendering in stone or gold or silver that Paul describes to his philosopher audience in Athens. And of course, the Spirit is the outworking of the living God that we too are called to proclaim to the world, in word and in deed. Let us not be too comfortable. Amen.
I feel like I need to say, are you sitting comfortably? Because there are quite a few notices. Quite a number of them relate to the Wendover Arts Festival that starts on the 22nd with a preview night and then runs all day on the Saturday, 23rd, Sunday the 24th and Monday the 25th. If you came last year, you will know how big it is. You will have heard what a wonderful fundraiser it is for us. And obviously we need to contribute to making it happen. There's been lots of people working away in the background. We've got some specific asks. We still need volunteers who can man the car park. The Chiltern Way School have allowed us to use part of their car park, but we need to make sure it all runs smoothly. So if anybody can help with that, we'd like that. A big part of it, other than the art, is the cafe. So throughout the 3 days, there's lots and lots of cake consumed. So please, if you're able to bake cakes, either tray bakes or big cakes, could you do that? Great if they're brought to the church during the weekend. Don't cut them up, because then the people in the cafe can be doing that. But please, there's been a note on the update about perhaps getting something into your freezer if you do bake. So that's another thing that, many people can do. And then finally, we have a big raffle, and there's an ask for bottles of wine and boxes of chocolates so that we can make up a few hampers for people to win of that. And please invite people that you know to come. You can't move around Wendover and probably, about 5 mile radius, Deborah, of seeing the posters around. And more will go up to draw people here. But please remember that if you can. One role that about a dozen people have is to unlock or lock up church. So we always say that church is open from 9 o'clock in the morning till at least 6 o'clock in the evening. William Avery's been able to do Wednesday mornings for a long time, and over the summer he's just not going to be able to do that. So we need a new Wednesday morning unlocker. So if you feel that it's something you can do, it's relatively straightforward. Catherine is going to be here, Church Warden Catherine, or talk to me if you were able to help with that. You can see the posters around for Christian Aid. Christian Aid Week starts today. And we're very grateful for everybody who's taken envelopes to deliver. We've got more streets than ever, and there are only very few left. So thank you for taking those. Please can you make sure they're put through doors. You don't need to go back, because the instruction on the envelope is for people to drop them into Just. But we're very grateful for that. Next Saturday there is at Western Turville Manor House, there's teas between 2:30 and 5 p.m. raising money for Christian Aid. And David will speak to us next week. There's a walk this afternoon leaving outside Sweeney's at 2:30, going up to Dunsmore and stopping there because they've got a plant sale today and also one of the wonderful Dunsmore teas. So that is happening. And next Saturday is the Choral Society concert, which a number of our congregation are involved in. You can get tickets for that at Just. And finally, I don't often do this, but somebody sitting behind me in the choir has a significant birthday. I'm not going to say what number, but Ian Phipps has a birthday. So, Edward, can we sing?
We can.
Excellent. Gather is celebrating with family.
Not in comfort, but in courage, we are asked to find our ground. Leaving sculpted stone and story for the spaces you are found. One who walks with us, beside us, known in breath and sight and sound. Not in triumphs, but in trusting hallowed earth on common ground.